Phil, you are looking so dapper today.
You cleaned up pretty good yourself there, Thomas. Oh, I see you're wearing pants.
Well, nothing but the best for our exclusive VIP pre-show. Ooh, Phil, I think we're on. Ooh. Hi, everyone. My name is Thomas Cote. I'm the artistic director of the Workshop Theater.
And I'm Phil Callan, general manager of the Workshop Theater.
Tonight is a really big night for us. Our live stream of Sofa Soiree 2, which begins at 8 p.m. But Phil, I see we've got some very exclusive guests with us here right now.
Oh my gosh, you weren't kidding. There they are. Those are our VIP guests, right? Oh, this is exciting.
What a distinguished and stylish crowd, and some beautiful sofas.
Oh.
There's Emma Berry, chair of the Workshop Theater Board.
Hey, Emma.
She's on her sofa. There's Linda. Hi, Jody. There's Jody.
Oh, hey, there's Barbara from Minneapolis. And Sharon from Connecticut. And Maisha from D.C. Hey, Maisha.
There's Jane. That's my mother-in-law, Phil.
Hi, Mom.
Jed Joni. Charles E. I think we have a very attractive crowd of people with us tonight.
I think so too, Thomas. Well, we can't thank you enough for joining us tonight. Tonight's soiree is going to be a fantastic celebration of the programs of the Workshop Theater. Along the way, we're going to share some wonderful performances with you, some great musical guests, and while we raise some vital funds for the workshop.
So, without further ado, let's get this exclusive VIP pre-show party started. Get out your limited edition Workshop Theater cocktail glasses. Boom, 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 boom.
We have a very special treat for you. Your first very special guest of the evening, your mixologist for the festivities.
You know him from his Tony Award-winning performances in Assassins and Fun Home, and we've all thrilled to his Demon Barber of Fleet Street. I think I thrilled to it 4 times, Phil. But tonight, he's coming to us a little closer to New Orleans.
Ah, yes, live from Bourbon Street, your celebrity mixologist and 2-time Tony winner, Michael Cerberus. Take it away, Michael.
Hi there. I'm Michael Cerberus, and I am delighted to be with you this evening. So we've got a couple cocktails that I'm going to make for you tonight. Philip was nice enough to invite me along to be your mixologist for the evening. I don't feel qualified to be a mixologist. I'm barely qualified to be a bartender. I did my time as a server for a number of years. Of course, the most important thing while you're mixing any cocktails is having the right music. And this evening, it being New Orleans, I've got a little New Orleans piano music for you. Now, you could use anybody. You could use Ellis Marsalis. You could use James Booker. You could use Professor Longhair, Dr. John. I have chosen for this evening Alan Toussaint and St. James Infirmary. So that's what you hear in the background. Now, it being New Orleans, I've tried to add some local ingredients, but you can replace any of them with whatever's handy. We're going to make 2 versions of an old-fashioned. It seems like a good drink this time of year, and we have 2 versions because we've got one with alcohol, and then we've got another that's non-alcoholic. I want to make sure that everybody has options and gets to be included in the proceedings. I myself have been a devoted whiskey drinker for a number of years, Scotch and whiskeys. But I've kind of, fortunately before the pandemic, decided to taper that off, and I really haven't been drinking for a while now. Most of my friends either went one way or the other during the pandemic. Either they doubled down on their alcohol intake or they thought differently of it. So no judgment here at all. But I'm going to give you 2 options. The first one is a somewhat traditional old-fashioned with a kind of autumnal twist to it. It's a maple old-fashioned. And you start off with your bourbon. I have chosen for this evening a terrific new option from the 713 distillery here in New Orleans. This is probably either the only or one of very small number of locally distilled bourbons in New Orleans. This one's called Bywater Bourbon, and it's just come out fairly recently. So you will want. Yep. There you go, brand new. So you'll want to have a couple of ounces of this. Now, it wouldn't be much of a maple old-fashioned if you didn't have some maple syrup instead of your simple syrup or your sugar cube, traditional sugar cube. I prefer kind of darker maple syrups, a little more flavorful, a little more vanilla-ish, but you can use whatever you want. I have here a terrific, another Louisiana specialty. This is Dr. Bill's cane and maple syrup, little cane sugar, cane syrup, and maple syrup. Made here in Louisiana. So the sugar cube works out to be about a teaspoonful of syrup. So we will just add that. Mix that up in there. Nice little cloudy thing going on. Already tasting great. And then you want to add little bitters. Angostura bitters is the traditional bitters for a old-fashioned. You can also use Peychaud's, which I'm going to use in the other one. That's a New Orleans one. 2 or 3 little dashes will do you. And then all you need is a little orange. I like to do it around the rim. Squeeze the oils in. Drop that in there. As far as ice goes, it's personal taste. And then the last little garnish you need is cherry. I like these Bada Bing cherries. Again, a little more flavorful, a little darker, a little more robust, but maraschinos are great too. That all together should make for one tasty maple old-fashioned. That'll do nicely. Now, there are plenty of reasons why you may not want to be drinking on a given evening, or during the holidays, say. There are plenty of reasons why you may want to be drinking this evening or during the holidays as well. But if you're choosing not to, I've got a very tasty alternative for you. It starts with this non-alcohol distillant from Wilderton. It's it comes from the Pacific Northwest. It is gluten-free, for those of you who are concerned about that. But there are a lot of people making really fascinating, complex non-alcoholic distillants these days. I happen to like these guys in particular. This is their Earthen Spirit. They have another one called Luster as well. But this one contains benzoin, cardamom, frankincense, cubeb, pimento, rose, and lapsang souchong tea. That smells great already. Kind of spicy, kind of autumnal, and really flavorful. So that's what we start with. Then I've got this great mixer. It's from a company called Muddle and Wild. This one is their cinnamon orange star anise syrup, kind of an alternative to simple syrup. And this you'd need about half an ounce of. Like so. Again, makes that nice cloudy little thing going on there. Might get a little maple from the other cocktail in there. Not a bad thing. And then you need a little very strong cold Earl Grey tea. So if, like me, you tend to make a tea and leave it sitting and forget that you made it or left it somewhere, you'll probably have some cold, strong tea somewhere around the house. So I've made a little. You need about an ounce of this. There you go. See, now we're getting color, sort of near the regular old fashioned, and then a couple dashes of bitters. And I'm now using these Peychaud's bitters, which are New Orleans staple. They're used in Sazeracs and a lot of other cocktails. They're not quite as intense as the Angostura, which makes them kind of nice for a little subtler addition. There we go. A couple dashes of that. Again, a couple of my non-fancy ice cubes. Again, a little more orange. And we're all ready, except for the cherry. And there you go. That is really tasty. And you don't feel like you're missing out on anything not having the alcohol. So thank you for allowing me to delay the start of this evening. Again, I'm really happy to be a part of this night that the Workshop Theater is putting together. Workshop Theater does such great stuff year round. Their flagship program, the Workshop Intensives, just developing new voices and new stories for the theater. I'm so excited about tonight's group of performers and playwrights, many of them good friends of mine, and hopefully good friends of yours. So thanks so much for letting me join you for the evening and pretend to be a mixologist for a minute. And it's New Orleans. Having a drink in each hand is really not a thing here. Cheers.
Delicious. Thank you, Michael. What a festive and perfect way to start our pre-show, our VIP pre-show of the Sofa Soiree 2. But that's not all.
That is right. You are about to be treated to a conversation between two of the finest actors working today,
Who both just happen to be on the advisory board of the Workshop Theater.
Frank Wood and Stephen McKinley Henderson.
Frank won a Tony for Sideman, a performance that I will never forget, and has been seen on Broadway in August Osage County as well as Network, and has so many film and TV appearances we can't list them all here.
Let's not forget Flight of the Conchords.
Ooh, right. And Stephen McKinley Henderson is known as one of the foremost interpreters of the works of August Wilson, having been in a Obie Award-winning production of Jitney, as well as both the Broadway and film versions of Fences with Denzel Washington.
Oh, Thomas, you gotta get going.
Oh,
Stephen also won an Obie, a Best Actor Obie, for his performance as Pops in Stephen Adly Gurgis's Between Riverside and Crazy. He was in the film version Spielberg's Lincoln, Greta Gerwig's Lady Bird, and he's currently starring in Dune as Tufir Hawat. I hope that's how you say that. They are both lovely men. Let's join them for a conversation with Thomas as they give you a backstage tour of the careers and craft of two sensational actors. Take it away, Thomas.
thank you, gentlemen, and welcome. Since at the workshop we focus so much on new writing and supporting new plays and playwrights, I wanted to ask, when you're presented with new writing, setting aside career logistics, what are you looking for in the writing itself? What attracts you? What excites you? What gets you going? Frank, let's start with you.
Okay. Well, I guess, the first new work that comes to mind was a play I didn't recognize the territory of, and it was Sideman, and it was that play that was such a big deal for me, for my career, for many things. But I remember not recognizing really the world of it, the jazz musicians, the really music as a central theme of it. But what I did parse out was this going to a different place, a place where the listening was not necessarily to the people I was talking to, but where listening was still this vital thing, this crucial element of the play. And it took me a while to get there, but in the end, I feel like that was what connected, what what got me cast in that role was somebody else's recognition that I would go somewhere else, listen to something inside my head. And so I can't say that that's a way I approach all work, but that was something particular about that play that attracted me to it. Yeah.
I'll just interrupt because I saw you in that play, and I love the whole play, and I have vivid memories of your performance, and specifically how it was like you were listening all the while to a track in your head. Part of that character seemed to be sort of an emotional distance from what was going on, but it was because there was this listening going on. I very much saw that in that performance. It's interesting you say that because it was
I think it was important to me, not because, and again, I had to come to the music aspect of it. It wasn't my central way of being, but it was about the way I could be distracted in my own life. I definitely had a degree of having trouble listening in class, having trouble, not a very good student, couldn't connect to the official part of the world very well. And that play really caught me. It caught me in it more than I caught it,
Mm-hmm. Stephen, what about you? What attracts you to new writing? What are you looking for?
I have to say about what Frank just said, because what so moved me about that play was to know how much being an artist affects your loved ones and the people around you, and how you can fall in love with an art form, but everybody that loves you didn't fall in love with that art form. But they're married to a doctor, or married to a policeman, or they're married to somebody whose job is really centered inside it. And I just thought that was brilliantly done by him. Which leads me to the thing that I really look for in the writing, which is the humanity. It's the thing that I think I wanted to be an actor because I felt like nobody got me right. Nobody was right about me. Everybody thought they knew who I was, and I wanted to make sure that they knew that I liked all this stuff, that I wasn't just the kid on that block who looked like that. I wanted to make sure I was a citizen of the world, and that I was a part of all, you know what I mean? And so I really looked to a script for that humanity. Now, usually you find it in the specificity of the cultural approach, what it's specifically about, but it's got to point to that larger thing. It's got to be something for me that somebody other than the people who they're like could appreciate. You know what I mean? Yeah, I guess I think I explained it, but that's what I love about new writing, that it really has a sort of a classic impact.
That's terrific. And Stephen, you've been a central participant in, probably one of the major theatrical events of our lifetime, which are the August Wilson Century plays. And I believe Jitney was your first production in Pittsburgh. And I know he did some rewriting in that production for that production. He had done some smaller versions of it before, and then they did it in Pittsburgh. I don't know if you were around that rewriting. I want to talk a little bit about being a part of that. What was he like in the room as a rewrite? And obviously, if you want to expand on what August was like as a person.
First, let me say, it wasn't my first August Wilson play, but I had done several, but because most of my career took place in regional theater for years until I met August today, But Eddie Gilbert, the artistic director of Pittsburgh Public Theater, when it was in the square, it's not the same space today, but same theater. And he asked him to come back and revisit the one play that he wrote in the decade that it occurs. Jitney was a play that he wrote back in the 70s. And he didn't have a 70s play. He wrote the first 2 or 3 plays, and then someone pointed out, oh, you've written a play in each decade, because he didn't set out to do that. He was the 3rd play in before someone pointed out that he'd written 3 plays and they all took place in a different decade. And then he said, oh, well, that's what I'll do. And Eddie Gilbert quite wisely, as an art teacher, said, "Come back and revisit your '70s play." And he did, and he came back. But of course, this was all these years later. Now he was August Wilson. He wasn't the guy in Pittsburgh writing that play. And he started tinkering with it. And I was in that cast that was very fortunate to be with him. And he wrote on it we started in 1996, and we did the play until 2002. And got the Olivier Award for August. But we did it in 14, 15 venues across America, then London, and then back to America. And at the time, and I won't take too long with this, but every regional theater that he, went, that he visited when he was building his shows, which Lloyd Richards crafted this marvelous trail that any playwright would be fortunate to follow Lloyd Richards to every regional theater that they could and then build on the play. But every regional theater also got a grant or extra grant money, or it benefited them if he wrote something while at that regional theater. And August, out of his generosity, even if he had wanted to just sit down and write the play, he had the luxury of getting to really keep examining it. And he also, it benefited the theater that he worked at, you know what I'm saying? So he was encouraged to continue to split the atom and split the atom and split the atom. So yeah, it was great to be a part of that.
Yeah, sure. And Frank, in Sideman, I believe there was a fair amount of I don't know how early you got involved in the show. Was it late? But I know he did some rewriting for the Broadway production, I believe. And that's a very autobiographical play for him. And can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Sure, because I think if I'm right, he really had finished the first act when I joined for what was going to be a 4-day reading at West Bank Cafe downstairs. And we did 4 performances. And during that time, I think is when the director, Michael Mayer, sort of told Warren that he had to, not only that he had to write a second act, but that he had to stop avoiding, I think, some element of conflict within his own family to get that second act written. That's how I remember it. It might be not historically accurate, but that's the way I remember it. And so we spent a lot of time also trying to finish the first, to get a sort of essentially kind of emotional button on the first act. That's what that part of the play spent a lot of time being rewritten in different, every time we had a new venue, we got a new ending, and that was my education. I mean, that gave, one of the great things about that production for me was that I'd barely been in a New York theater. I mean, and so to get to Broadway via a reading and then a summer, New York Station film, and then off Broadway and the roundabout, and then Broadway felt to me like the only way to work on a play. But the next time I had an opportunity to audition for a Broadway show, I was scared because I thought 4 weeks of rehearsal won't be enough for me to stand up to that kind of attention,
Right. And did you have, either of you, did you have direct input to the playwright on some of these rewrites? Was it the kind of a collaborative feeling where you felt like you could speak up and give your voice and give your opinion?
Well, I'll jump in. Wasn't that kind of a circumstance, but what was interesting was that August would at times ask you if this or that worked for you. But you see, this is because I was on this journey for several years on that one specific play. And then I did other plays with him, but he was not in need of anyone helping. He had Lloyd Richards, he had a dramaturg, he had Marion McClinton in the productions that I was. But no, it wasn't that kind of thing. But what I do have to say is it was clear that he was listening to the actors in rehearsal when they weren't on stage. He was listening to because it was a group protagonist in a sense in Jitney. He really did want to get that feel between them, And so, like the great actor Anthony Chisholm, who's passed on out, Anthony told a story about his dad being a tailor. And the next thing you know, his character was talking about the double cross top stitch that he built a suit for, Billy Eckstein, and so August used things. I mentioned something about my life, and I realized right away when I read the thing, I said, oh, that it's reminiscent of. It's not the same thing, but he allowed himself to be effective, but it wasn't like, asking, and nor did anybody feel like, hey, August, let me help you.
Yeah.
Right. I'm saying that.
Sure.
I think that we had, in that particular circumstances, Warren was reasonably open to hearing our suggestions, because at a certain point it came down to sort of I think just a technical moment he couldn't figure out. But I don't remember any of us having good ideas. So what I remember he was saying, what do you think? And we try stuff. But I think what Stephen was just saying is what ended up happening is that Warren just stepped back and finally wrote what he thought made the most sense after he was kind enough to let us say, what if I enter here? Or, what if I hold the trumpet up like that? But in the end, I think it was just finally between Michael Mayer and Warren sort of figuring it out from perspective,
Right.
not from inside it.
Right. Switching a little bit, you both have done a fair amount of television and film as well as stage. And I just wanted to ask, do you prepare differently? Is there a different process for you when you're, getting those kinds of scripts versus, say, a play? How do you look at that? Or is it the same preparation?
I heard, Stephen, I was listening to you actually earlier today in an interview, and I heard, and you were, that subject came up, and your reaction was so fantastic because the interviewer said, what's the typical rehearsal period for a movie? And you said something like, that's a very good joke. And, and I'd like to hear what,
I don't know which interview that was, and I don't want to, I trust your memory of it more.
Okay.
When you do a lot of takes, when I worked with a director who said he didn't believe in rehearsing, but he do maybe 40 takes, and I'm saying, what do you think an actor is doing when you do that many takes? That's rehearsal, as far as I'm concerned. You're honing it. I don't approach it. I don't approach a role differently in a different medium. I kind of like to say you adjust to the camera, but you don't adapt to it. It's the same art form. If I've studied acting for X amount of years, and I could see taking a class, I understand when they say taking a class, acting on camera. But when I hear they say acting for the camera, I kind of say, that's just not what I'm doing. I'm not acting for the camera. I'm any more than I'm acting for the audience in that way. I'm doing it. I'm giving it to the audience. All right. I want to make sure that they're receiving it, but it's a relationship with the material. It's a relationship that I started with poetry, and so as I say, you adjust to the optics of a space. Frank will tell you, if you're doing an off-Broadway show and you're doing it in a black box, you're adjusting to that space. If you go to Broadway, you gotta adjust to the size. You gotta modulate the thing to the size of that house. And it's the same thing I find essentially with the different mediums. Now, there are ways that a director and a cameraman, a cinematographer, can help you tremendously, because they're not going to let you throw your work away. You know what I mean? So but every adjustment that you need to make, there's someone there to help you with. But for me personally, I try to stay in the same connection with the craft that I've always had. And that's, to that extent, the Meisner work helped me a lot. The bit that I was exposed to with Bill Esper in the summer intensive really helped wake up again the fact that I really need the other actor's eyes. I really realize I get a lot from the other actor. It's a pinch, ouch, touch, feel kind of thing.
Yeah, and I would say that logistics definitely throw a wrench into the works if you the first time you deal with the change. I mean, the fact that you don't go to a rehearsal and go and sleep at night and think about the lines you've said in rehearsal, but instead you have 5 seconds or whatever time it is to go back at it again. You have to understand that what you're compensating with is the fact that you only have 3/8 of a page to say that day. So that's the boost you get, but you don't get to go home and sleep with it, and you don't get to go home and think about it. And I would say for the most part, a lot of particularly television scripts don't have the character development that a play has. So you have less personality, you have less of character written into the part, and you have to do a lot more deciding, what that, saying I am enough, and that's supposed to be true on stage as well, but it's particularly important to remember that you're the character, and with some obviously, some exceptions there. You can see great transformative acting all the time on film, but the kinds of work I get now on television and stuff, I'm thinking, don't try to transform, try to accept, because I get caught up, and I can think of a few instances where the time I spent away learning these lines, like a speech I had before I got to set, it was a different life I needed to be living than what I had in my head, and I had to make that adjustment,
And what
That's
about
so well put. Frank, I just got to say, he really did nail that there. And it makes me want to just add that I've often been my own worst enemy because I care so much, and you think, because you care, you want to put a lot of sweat into it, when ease is what it requires. More so than sweat, it requires ease. Yeah. And to that extent, I have to tell this on myself. I was fortunate enough, to work with Daniel Day-Lewis and Steven Spielberg on Lincoln. And we had finished this day of work, and I was in a scene that was just Daniel Day and I and Steven in a hallway replicating the White House and trying to capture a moment that there was very little dialogue. It was a moment, that he was. But it meant a lot to Mr. Spielberg that what this moment was. So we worked on it, and we worked a bit, and Daniel Day was so generous, and Mr. Lincoln was so generous because it was great to work with him as Abraham Lincoln. Now, if I had been on There Will Be Blood or something, I don't know how. but the generosity of Lincoln's spirit was there. But the point I want to make is, at the end of the day, and I was an experienced actor. I wasn't a kid, man, at the time. But at the end of the day, I asked Steven. I said, "Listen, I hope you got what you wanted. Because I was concerned that I had gotten what he wanted." And he looked at me and said, "Steven, if I didn't have what I wanted, we wouldn't be going home, man." It's like he's not working on by the clock or trying to worry about the budget or anything. He's at that level that he's saying, "No, I got several things that we could use, but I'll find that all out when I get to the editing room. But you've given enough today for sure, and it's just what Frank just said, is that you are enough." That's just wonderful. And I've heard myself say that to students before. And you got to remember the lesson is for you. You got to remember that all the things that you try to, but that's exactly it, that you are enough. You got the job. Don't blow it by doing something other than being you.
That's precisely, and I don't want to string this out too much longer, but that job that I was referring to was a job I got like in, probably December of 2017, but they didn't use me till, November of 2018. And I had one speech, and I spent I went to a speech coach to see if I could get a certain kind of accent that would make sense for the era, and when I got in there, but the director wasn't interested in directing actors, so he didn't tell me not to do it. But when I saw my performance on film, I was like, oh, that's just, that's not a place I wanted to go. That's just not. It lived a different life, and if it had been a play, it would have been, I would have had 3 and 4 days before the director would have finally said, stop doing that,
What about, is there any favorite stories, any moments from your careers, from your work life that you want to share with us, or moments you're proud of, funny stories, anything like that?
No, I can tell you though, the proudest moment remains something that I did in 1981. I was working for the St. Louis Repertory Theater, and we had done Fougart's play, Cecil Bonsi is Dead, one year, and then the following year we did The Island, which is a play by Fugard, Winston and Shona and John Connie, and where it's the Antigone story told by 2 South African prisoners. But we were playing the Dublin Theatre Festival. We were invited to go to the Dublin Theatre Festival in '81. And we had a wonderfully successful run, and it was the last night of the run. And we were being held for, the first day held for 15 minutes, and they said we got to hold, and it was half hour, it was beyond half an hour. It was another half hour that, so we asked what was going on. He said, well, there were so many people in the audience, and it was European seating, and said all the aisles were blocked, and they couldn't get the people to leave, and they called the fire department, and the fire department had to come out and remove the people from one aisle, because it was seating all the way across, continental seating, and then an aisle on both sides, and they allowed people to sit on the one aisle, but they had to keep one aisle open for, in case there was fire. So we finally started the show. But when we went out, because they told us all this, and we went out, and it was a thing where you walk across and around, but we could sense and feel and see that there were people all the way across. So we said, oh my God, are they going to stop the show because the people had come back in? But we get through the whole evening and it was over. And I said, well, what happened, man? Because there were people everywhere. And he said, yeah, that was the fire department. They got these people up, but they had heard about the show too. And they sat, the members of the fire department, they sat in the aisle and watched the show. So to be in Dublin and have a closing night like that was it remains the most a special story. Aside from being there at Edmund Burke Hall at Trinity College, where we performed it, was a kick. So that's my little story.
It's a great story.
But that provides me with at least a geographic segue, because I was in Dublin when I got a call from Warren Leight, actually, who wrote Sideman, about the fact that the Steppenwolf production of Sideman had been invited to Australia for they had already done it in their season, but the guy who played my role wasn't available, and so he wondered if I would go to Australia with Steppenwolf and do the production there. And to me, the first thing was, after doing about 800 performances of Sideman in different venues, but with the same production, when I got to Steppenwolf and when we started working on the play, I really had a hard time entering stage left if I had originally entered from stage right. And I had a hard time with the desert boots instead of the wingtips. And I had to have a conversation with the director. We did a list of things that seemed sort of like things she absolutely had to have, and things I kind of had to have, because I wasn't sure I could survive the rehearsal process because so many things were in my bones, And I don't think I have a reputation as a difficult actor, or many experiences where I felt that I was being difficult. But when we did the dress rehearsal in Australia and they skipped a costume change, they decided they went from one time period right into the next one. And there was a little moment in the first production that I was in, where there was a little we went on stage in the unemployment line in the 80s instead of the 90s, let's say. And the poor dresser was back there with like just, a sweater that wasn't what I was expecting. And they had to stop and explain to me, that it really was a reasonable segue. But I had kind of a meltdown. But that's anyway. I also went on to have the best time of my life, but that was just I was surprised at my own neediness, at my own rigidity. I hadn't realized that I had been, in some ways, what I learned from that show was how much there was still to learn about the role and about that play, because it was beautifully done, and it was also about 15 minutes shorter without any cuts.
Wow.
They didn't have transitions with music and lighting all the time. They just sort of went boom, 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 boom. You stayed on stage, lights came up, went out, came up, but it was beautiful. And I just remember, and I loved these. I mean, most of the time during these problems, with the exception of that dress rehearsal, I was having a good time. I mean, we were enjoying the fact that it was a weird animal to step into a different production, of the same play.
That's terrific. I think we're good. Thank you so much for sharing your time, for doing this for us. It just means a lot to us, the support both of you have shown and the support you show for theater in general, which we know needs every bit of support it can get, especially in these days. So I just want to thank you very, very much for being here, and just terrific.
Wow, thank you, Frank and Stephen. That was really inspiring. Well, folks, we hope you've enjoyed our exclusive VIP pre-show festivities. We're so grateful to each and every one of you for being a part of it. And now we're thrilled to have you head on over and join the rest of our audience for the live stream of Sofa Soiree 2. Just above the viewer you're watching, just above my head, you'll see a red button that says Enter the Main Event. When you click that button, you'll be taken to the landing page for Sofa Soiree 2. You can relax on your sofa and wait for the live broadcast to begin. You can even make another maple old-fashioned. Yum. All set? Okay, so now go ahead, click on over to Sofa Soiree 2. Thomas and I will be there in a minute. Can't wait.